Welcome viewer, this is Rana, and today we will look at a video from our popular channel LADbible. If there was ever any punching up, this would be it. Now during this video, I will be addressing Connor quite often. So when I use the word you, unless you are that Connor, please don't take it personally.
The earth is flat, why hasn't anyone fallen off yet? It's the idea that you're on a disc in the middle of space in a vacuum, and if you just walk off this disc, you're gonna just start floating into nowhere. From a flat earth perspective, we live within an enclosed system. Whether or not that means there's a physical container, or is it a force? Is it a force of nature? Is it electromagnetism? Is it, there are different explanations as to how we could be contained.
What a utter bunch of BS. To begin with, when you say there are different explanations to how we can be contained, what exactly do you mean by the word explanation? Some words are used differently in science compared to general vocabulary. Unless I'm mistaken, in science, we don't really have different explanations. We call them hypotheses, as in a possible explanation for something, which then has to be verified and confirmed. My guess is, you're saying you guys have various hypotheses, and then please call it so. The word explanation sounds like a proven fact in this context.
What is beyond the border of the flat earth? Oh, I wish I knew. That would be something, it would be great to find out. I would love to one day explore and find out whether or not, anything to do with Antarctica is the way we thought it was, whether or not it's the edge of the earth.
This really confuses me. At some flat earth model, this outside border or rim is depicted as a giant wall of ice. But Connor seems to be willing to say either we find a container or it goes forever. Connor, when we say container, earlier you mentioned a physical barrier or some kind of force. For physical barrier, I assume we are talking similar to The Truman Show? I guess a force would be similar to sci-fi movie. A field that we cannot pass through and it is not solid. Obviously, if it was solid, it would be physical. So, would you be able to see through this force, or would it be opaque? Come on, people need to know just in case they come across it. So let's talk about south. Well, not that south, but South Pole. Typically, when we say South Pole, we mean geographic South Pole, which is different from the South Magnetic Pole, the position of which defined based on Earth's magnetic field. How far have we been in relation to geographic South Pole? The first expedition to reach the geographic South Pole was led by Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen. He and 4 others arrived at the pole on 14th of December 1911, 5 weeks ahead of a British party led by Robert Falcon Scott as part of the Terra Nova expedition. Fun fact about South Pole. It is presently located on the continent of Antarctica. Yes, due to the continental drift, that has not always been the case. It sits atop a featureless, barren, windswept and icy plateau. This polar ice sheet is moving at a rate of roughly 10 meters per year in a direction between 37 degree to 40 degree west of grid north. Therefore, the position of the station and other artificial features relative to the geographical pole gradually shift over time. The geographical South Pole is marked by a stake in the ice alongside a small sign. These are repositioned each year in a ceremony on New Year's Day to compensate for the movement of the ice. At the time of writing, you can yourself visit South Pole. A 2-person expedition would cost around $100,000 per person. But if you do, don't forget to take some photos at ceremonial South Pole. It is located some meters from the geographic South Pole and consists of a metallical sphere on a short barber pole, surrounded by the flags of the original Antarctic Treaty signatory states. Yes, you can go there yourself. I'm not sure what you'd achieve though. And in theory, you can cross across it. And there lies the next kicker. First is the temperature. That place will actively try to kill you. It is the most inhospitable place in the world. The mean annual temperature at the South Pole is minus 49.5 degrees centigrade. I did mention barren as well, right? My quick estimation of minimum coast-to-coast distance while passing over center is around 3,500 kilometers, just in case someone wanted to trek across it. While no airline has yet opted to fly over Antarctica en route to another destination, flights to and around Antarctica purely for observation are operated by Antarctica Flights. About 4 hours is spent over the Antarctic. Connor, TLDR, we have been there. Trust me. There is no infinite plane or a dome. The funny thing is, if you go there yourself and be convinced of a globe Earth, to the rest of your community, you have just been bought by an hidden powerful people. I'll address the land and resource point later on.
What about flat Mars? Are all planets flat stars, or is only the Earth flat? The misconception here is that we still exist in this solar system with all these other spheres, so you're still putting geocentrism into your model. I don't believe anyone's ever been to space. I don't even think space in the way that we see it exists. I don't think you can just go into a vacuum somewhere. I don't think that whole thing has been completely fabricated. You can't go to land on Mars, you can't land on the moon. These are not spherical rocks just sitting in a vacuum. They are the lights in the sky as stars are. Maybe the product of sonoluminescence, maybe something else, but certainly not terra firma that you can go land on.
A fair question that you have dodged bringing in geocentric model. Did you mean heliocentric? Or are you one of those flat earthers who doesn't even agree with geocentric? I mean, your channel is called LADbible. Or did you get those two mixed up? So planets and moons in our solar system is same as stars, and all are lights. Then you mentioned solar luminescence. I don't think it means what you think it means. Well, solar luminescence is the emission of short bursts of light from imploding bubbles in a liquid when excited by sound, and was discovered at the University of Cologne in 1934 as a result of work on sonar. Well, Connor, from what we know, the light that flashes from the bubble lasts between 35 and a few hundred picoseconds long, with peak intensity of the order of 1 to 10 milliwatts. The bubbles are very small when they emit the light, about 1 micrometer in diameter. So yeah, throwing in a science word doesn't mean you have just explained it. If those are all lights, out of all of them, I just want you to explain one. That should be easy, right? Forget the rest. The one I have in mind is called Polaris. We can see it from northern hemisphere. Please do explain why that happens to a light source above a flat plane. You said Mars is not physical as we can determine. Who are we? To me, we is mankind. So when we land a probe, regardless which country sent it, I would say it's us. We landed on moon. Well, I didn't. I don't personally know those guys who did land. We don't even have the same nationality, to pull my tribalism card. But still, it's us. Unless you mean we as individual people. Well played. As I would have to agree. I don't have the resources to land a probe on moon. You got me? By the way, I can still use a laser to get a reflection back from moon, thanks to those reflectors left behind by Apollo 11. So out of a vast number of lights, one of those happens to reflect back laser photons for a very small specific area when targeted correctly.
If the Earth is flat, how can planes fly from, say, America to Asia in either direction? They're basically talking about circumnavigation. Circumnavigation is entirely possible both on the globe model and the flat model.
God damn! How can someone be this stupid? Let's look at a flat Earth map and ask ourselves this question. Why did the commenter mention these two areas? Any guesses from flat earthers? Well, because those are the two closest continents in your map where a straight line would go over the pole. You seem to have completely missed it or chosen not to understand the point. I have a couple of videos on flight paths. Links would be in description, and those goes way more into specific details. Every flight route depends on one final word: profit. And almost always, it would be a straight line between two destinations with couple of additional factors, like locations to airports on the way in case of emergencies. And that reason itself would allow a proper explanation instead of what you did. Why doesn't it go straight from, say, Edmonton in Canada to Moscow in Russia? Simply, not enough airports en route that would facilitate a commercial jet. If you're truly interested, one of my videos explaining Australian plane flights to another of your peer, flat earther Kyle Adams. I explained how mathematically we can prove how flights between three positions on a globe, as observed, cannot work on a flat plane. And yes, I took into account that every pilots in the world slow down or speed up to keep up the facade.
He actually said it's flat the whole way around. Let that sink in for a minute.
I honestly don't understand this. If it is a flat world, then it is flat the whole way around. What's the big deal?
The flat earthers already disproved themselves with the laser tests in that documentary like a year ago, so why is anyone still debating this? Okay, I'm assuming you mean Behind the Curve, the Netflix documentary.
Okay, seems like people don't understand economics. So let me try. Suppose I'm making a documentary on flat earthers. Make no mistake, at the end of the day, I want it to succeed. Maybe make some money or be famous, whatever. No sane person wants to create something and not wishing it to succeed. Which reminds me, if you have liked this video so far, please drop a like. I want this video to succeed. You called it a hit piece. Well, the editing was done in a way to make you guys look even more foolish than you are. But understand this, if either of those top two tests, the one with laser gyroscope or the laser test succeeded, heck, the title of the movie would be The World is Flat, Confirmed, and would be a bigger success than what it is. It's only a hit piece because it didn't work out to your advantage. Oh, by the way, that laser gyroscope is based on an experiment you guys quite often like to mention. I also have covered this in great detail. Now, some of you may have guessed that English is not my first language, but I do appreciate the subtleties and ambiguities it allows compared to other languages I know. Thus, all my mentalism performances are in English. One of the words I love is inconclusive. Imagine me testing out my theory that I can defy gravity and fly. So I walk outside my home and perform my simple experiment by jumping. Guess what? I didn't fly. Well, my experiment was inconclusive. Wonderful, right? If you haven't seen the documentary Beyond the Curve, it's a fun watch. On those two mentioned experiments, one was to confirm that the Earth was not rotating, and on that test, they picked up a 15-degree-per-hour drift. Full points to those who immediately recognizes that 15 times 24 is 360. The laser test was to prove there is no curvature. Obviously, there is a curvature, and that experiment will never succeed. But oh no, the result was inconclusive.
what kind of evidence would convince a flat earther? They keep asking for it, but deny it every time if it proves them wrong. I don't think that's true.
Your first reply is, you don't think it's true. Do you see the irony in there? But in all seriousness, that is a joke. Imagine me saying to you that you always argue with people smarter than you. That wonderfully crafted sentence should compel you not to argue, because by arguing, you would be proving my point. Did I mention how much I love this language? Seems like the only evidence you're willing to accept is seeing the car with your own eyes. One can argue that it is a really narrow criteria for acceptance. It's like me saying I'll only believe in air if I see it. Which brings me to your independent source. As we mentioned it earlier, if we manage to get you to see the curve, would that be an acceptable evidence to other flat earthers? Well, we both know answers to that. You talk about proof, and that it can go either way. That is way too much dishonesty for anyone, and I'm a mentalist. I'm an agnostic when it comes to God, but a complete atheist when it comes to flat earth. It cannot go either way, unless you reject every proof we give you and keep saying there is no proof.
I don't think it's going to happen, because I think they're hiding something there. I think it's clear as day that they're hiding something there.
Of course.
Okay, let's say scientists accept that the Earth is flat, and what will flat earthers do next? Like, what are their plans? What do they want? I just can't understand this.
Okay, I will explain. You guys are conspiracy nuts. Once in a while, one of the conspiracy is correct. Heck, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Personally, I think some of you do it for the love of conspiracy, and others, like you, do it for view count. The cynic in me does not paint you as an ignorant fool. So it is a funny question. My answer would be that you'd move to the next hat, and so on. Fortunately, we'll never have to say it.
Am I too stupid to understand the flat earther, or too smart to understand the flat earther? Yeah, probably neither. You just have to be willing to let go, or to kind of put to one side your preconceived notions of what you think flat earth to be.
When you hear any flat earthers say that you need to put aside any preconceived notions, what they really mean is ignore anything that doesn't support their view. Read and agree with zetetic astronomy and everything is okay. I'm ignoring the next two comments. Those are ad hominem attack and do not deserve your time or mine.
This is the difference between getting your knowledge from studying and getting it from YouTube videos. You know what's funny? Do you ever remember being in science class and your whole science class was someone wheeling out a TV and putting a Bill Nye video in, and you just watched Bill Nye for that whole class?
Interesting. Maybe because I'm too old. We never watched TV in school. At a certain age, we were allowed into the mysterious lab I always watched the bigger kid go into wearing a cool lab coat. Then one day I was old enough to get inside, play with chemicals and dissect frogs. I was crazy good at that. Then other things I watched, well, those are moderated by my dad. I have a funny memory of watching Tarzan, and the only movie he didn't moderate. Because heck, it was Tarzan. But it was the Bo Derek version. It was an embarrassing watch for both of us together. My point being, if you're watching something at school, I'm pretty sure it has to be moderated. That doesn't completely clear it though. I know an anthropology professor who starts a lecture saying Allah is the true God and evolution is BS. But in most cases, one can assume for the best. Whereas in YouTube, there is no moderation. I have seen videos people claiming that they have lived for years without any food. Maybe we can both agree that it is possible to come across bad information easier on YouTube than a school lesson.
Arguing with a genius is hard. Arguing with an idiot is near impossible.
Another true statement, but Connor, I wouldn't take it personally if I were you. This is getting to be a long video, so I'll try to be quick. Some of the points you make seems to contradict each other. We all agree on the scarcity of resources and lands. What did we do on old days? We traveled and we colonized. Why did the power on those days only allowed it to the known land masses? And as it is such a vital resource, what is stopping all the large nations from just claiming it? Look at the world this very moment. It is in complete turmoil. China has been trying to extend their territory for years. From making a fake 9-dash line to confronting every globe made in China to follow their view. We have other superpowers like Russia and US, not exactly buddy-buddy. So either nobody is doing it, or all those big nations are doing it, but keeping it a big secret. To what end goal? Who knows? Would having an undiscovered land change most of our day-to-day life? Would you drop your current life, job, people you know, to settle and colonize an unknown land? I can tell you that it won't be me. So back to the question, what would be the reason for those governments to hide it? As days pass by, more and more nation becomes space-worthy. There was a time no nation had been to space. By January 2018, people from 37 countries have traveled to space. 554 people have reached Earth's orbit. I'm truly sorry that you're not one of them. 14 countries have the ability to launch an object into space, and every single one of them, regardless their political stance, had agreed to be in cahoot just for you guys. You know what? You guys are the prime example of geocentric model. Everything revolves around you. For those who are interested, I have 13 specific videos debunking 13 of flat earthers' claims, plus some more covering additional grounds. In a couple of them, I talked about various experiments we can perform. The most recent one titled Irrefutable Proof for Flat Earthers. I would appreciate if you'd watch it. Spoiler, I talk about the tiny reflectors left on moon by our astronauts that we can use to get reflected laser back to us.
It's essentially a cult. It's a cult of people who are hiding the secrets of the world from the rest of the people.
Finally, you don't know what cult means, do you? Well, the most common meaning would be a religious group, often living together, whose beliefs are considered extreme or strange by many people, like the Manson family. Or it can be someone or something that has become very popular with a particular group of people, like the movie The Room, and I think I belong to that group myself. But commonly, it's the first definition minus the religious aspect. The key word here is many people. Simply put, majority by definition cannot be a cult. Only minorities can belong to a cult, and the moment they are majority, it is no longer a cult but a norm. Do you see how it works? I mean, you are a good-looking man with huge bicep, wonderful pronunciations, but were you at the back of the line when they handed out the brain? Watching these videos will surely melt my brain, but I will still be more open than flat earthers. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have liked this content, can I please ask you to subscribe? It would definitely help my little channel grow. Pretty please with a cherry on top. Have a safe day. Signing off.